Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between, welcome to another episode of the Chaps Chat Cats, a part of the Hoops Crew Media Network. My name's Jake, and I'm joined in the virtual studio tonight by the one and only Mr. Johnny Larkin. How are you, Larko?
Yeah, pretty good. Not too bad. How about yourself?
I'm pretty damn good. Spring has sprung up here, Johnny. The sun is out, spent most of the day out picking up free plants and then putting them into the garden. Got some impressive big grassy shrubbery to put along a fence line. It's looking fantastic. I'm feeling good. Monday
Beautiful.
off to a pretty good start. The week off to a pretty good start. And
then the
glad to be jumping. That's right. The rain will come, rain it all in. Perfect. Gardener's delight. Good show tonight, Johnny, I'm sure. Pre-show grade of a solid B+, I reckon. No, we can aim higher than that. We are going to be looking at the Cats v Saints round 23 recap. Bit of a disappointing result on the weekend. We will chop up all our thoughts from it. And then we're going to duck over and talk some Patreon question time for our Hoops Crew Patreon subscribers. They've sent us some questions. We might also even touch on the contract extensions for Zach Guthrie and Jack Henry. We've both committed to the club on a long-term deal for each of them. If you want to get that part of the show, then make sure you go on over, sign up for a 7-day free trial with the Hoops Crew Patreon. You get extended versions of our podcast. You get Wednesday news wraps, scratching post episodes from Paul, coverage of the VFL men's and women's season. So yeah, go on over, start your 7-day free trial. We wanted to hit 30 active paid members by the end of this season. We're currently at 25. So if you've been thinking about pulling the trigger on it, maybe that can be your extra impetus to go on and give us a crack, even if it's just that 7-day free trial to have a go. All right, Johnny, no more mucking around with that business. It's time. It's time to talk about a game that on Saturday night probably made us just a little bit melancholic. So I will run us through how it all unfolded, and then you will give us your general opening statement and thoughts on the match. Johnny, we said going into this one, a potential banana peel game for the Cats against a Saints team that had no finals to play for. It was a strange one. The Cats definitely started the better of the two teams. You had an early goal to Shannon Neal. I thought, Big Neely's on for a big night. That was followed up not long after a goal to Sean Manor after 10 minutes. Another goal to the Cats. Ollie Henry, Geelong flying. The Saints had 3 shots. They missed those. The Cats went in up 3-2 20 to 3 behinds. They extended that lead. Went bang, bang early. Mitch Nevitt. And then Patrick Dangerfield. It was out to nearly 30 points. And we were thinking, here we go. They've come out, woken up. The pressure was good. The ball movement was pretty decent. Then the Saints got one back. Jack Steele put him on the board. The Cats responded with a goal to Ollie Dempsey. He can't kick a normal one. This one was a snap along the ground that just bounced under the hands of a defender, went through for a goal. The Saints got another one back through Jack Higgins after 15 minutes of the second term. They got another back via the boot of Mason Wood, and suddenly Saints were back in it. It's only a couple of goals in the contest. Geelong put their foot on the throat. Goals to Jeremy Cameron, Sean Manor, and Tyson Stengel blew the margin out beyond 30 points at the half. It was Geelong 9-3-57 to the Saints 3-6-24. We went in feeling pretty jubilant and buoyant at home, Johnny. I have to say the mood in the lounge room where we were all watching was one that definitely did not think disaster was about to befall Geelong, but disaster did befall the Cats. Darcy Wilson goal after just 30 seconds of the second half. Rowan Marshall had another one on the board 2 minutes later. Just 3.5 minutes later, it was Cooper Sharman. And just 3 minutes after him, it was Darcy Wilson. 4 goals on the board to the Saints in the first 7 minutes, 43 seconds of the second half. They nearly had more behinds to Darcy Wilson, Liam Stocker, and Darcy Wilson again before Tim Membry and Jack Higgins went goal for goal to put the Saints in front after 22 minutes and 17 seconds. Now, the Cats, they fired back via the boot of Gary Rowan, but the Saints were up and about. Mitch Owens put them back into the lead as we turned for the final change of ends. The Saints up 10-10-70, the Geelong 10-4-64, and some worrying signs. Tyson Stengel got the Cats on level terms after just 34 seconds of the final term. Shannon Neal behind after 2 minutes put the Cats' noses in front. Bradley Hill put the Saints back ahead. Reece Stanley took a great mark against his old club and kicked the goal to put Geelong back in front. But thereafter, a red, black, and white avalanche opened in the space of about 10 minutes. The Saints put this game away. Cooper Sharman, Jack Higgins, Dan Butler, and Mitch Owens all gold between the 16-minute 49-second mark and the 22-minute 54-second mark. 4 goals in 6 minutes. They added a fifth to Jack Steele after 27.5 minutes, and that was the game done. A couple of late scores to Jeremy Cameron took his tally for the evening to 3. But Johnny, the Saints come away with what I'm going to just call a deserved victory. 16-11, 107, 27 scoring shots to Geelong, 14-5, 89. What were your opening thoughts here?
Where was this St Kilda team this whole year? They were playing like they were bound for finals. Really, the Saints, like they obviously didn't start the best, but then that second half just it made me think of I was thinking today of what sums up the Cats game, and I thought of it's a Monty Python skit in the movie Holy Grail, where they're at the cave, about to go in, and there's Tim the Enchanter and all the knights. I kept thinking like Tim the Enchanter's like Sydney going, it's really dangerous in there. Don't go there. It'll kill you. King Arthur can be the first half of the game. It's like, what is just a rabbit? It's no threat. Goes to the guy who goes first, goes, boys, go cut its head off. And it's Cat's second half. Goes, all right, I'll go in. And then it goes St Kilda, the rabbit, tearing the Cat's head off in the second half. It was like, really felt that way. It's like no threat.
That's a beautiful metaphor, John.
And then they just, turned it around. It was interesting. It was a really bizarre way the game played. It was like definitely played in 2 very distinct halves where Cats looked really good. Like it was like beautiful. Cats, this is easy. Got to have a really nice win or relax, as you said. And then when they kicked those first 3 goals, it was like, oh, this is a bit. No, we just got to get one back here. Just got to get ourselves in the game. But it never came until the Saints got in front, and it was just like something in the air here. It just doesn't feel right. And it just really goes to show that if you're not there fully 100%, if you're 5% off in a game, no matter how far ahead you are, because it's going to cost you, it's going to hurt you, and it hurt the Cats. So I think they just lifted the pedal, the foot off the pedal a little bit too lightly, going into the half, just thinking, I'm probably not thinking, but just going, we've got a good lead, ease back into the second half. And the Saints just jumped them really well, really good, and just didn't let the Cats get back to the way we wanted to play. They took the ball off the Cats, and it was one of those games that you go, well, it's probably a good thing it happened now in a way. Can work on those things. Maybe it's maybe a bit late, but you still know the Cats can play really good football. But it's just got to watch out for those teams countering the Cats' form, and it was just on the night. I was pretty disappointed in the loss. I thought it was probably one of those losses. I was like, we can't drop these ones against a team that's not making the finals. And I thought about it, I was like, well, at the end of the day, we did, and there's not much we can change about it. I'm not going to dwell on it too much. The Cats aren't going to dwell on it too much. They'll review it, do all that, go through all the usual bits and bobs, and then look ahead to this West Coast game. But yeah, it's an odd game, one that felt really like we were in full control, and then they just lost a bundle. Lost a bundle in that second half, and Saints stole it off us. Oh, they didn't steal it off us; they took it off us, and they played much
Mm.
better. And yeah, just it was a
Ain't
weird,
spending
weird
any time on
feeling
it
at the end of the
because
game.
in the meantime, every 3 months, a person is torn to pieces by a crocodile in North Queensland.
Yeah,
There's
just
bigger issues out there, isn't there, John?
there is bigger issues. There's a finals on the horizon. As I said to many people at work, and I think I said to Sam and maybe yourself, that we've still proven the entire AFL world wrong yet again by making the finals
Mm.
and most likely making the top four. Like if we lose to West Coast next week, that'll be an absolute travesty at home celebrating Hawkins. So yeah, it's I dare say a top four spot maybe. Like if all things go away, we could even finish as high as second if we have a big enough win and
Mm.
Port Giants lose their games fairly convincingly. But it's going to be interesting. But yeah, at the end of the day, it is what it is. I think everyone just needs to move on, not stress too much about it. The Cats, they dropped the bundle, really. They dropped the ball at the end of the day, and they'll either go look back on and go, oh, we could have finished
Mm.
second, got a game at MCG, or most likely we're facing Sydney at the SCG. I don't think at the end of the day it's going to make a huge difference at like for who we play or where we play. I think it is what it is.
You've got to be prepared to play anyone anywhere. It has been a truly bizarre season, but I mean, we kind of
It
foreshadowed
has been.
on the preview pod that it was this was a result that actually, to be honest, when I looked at the month and we said we needed to go 3-1 in the final 4 games to make top four, I kind of had the Saints in the back of my mind pegged as a game that we were very capable of losing, only because I always thought that down at Kardinia Park we had to beat the Crows by Crook. The game in Freo, to me, there was always more pressure on the Dockers. And I always feel like Geelong gets up for these games against other sort of contenders that, it should be their time now. It should have been Freo's turn to finally, sort of surge up, take a spot in the top four. And they couldn't get it done because Geelong just go in so prepared for these games.
Mm.
You've got the Tom Hawkins look ahead spot in the last week. And it was sort of like, I felt like, if not the team, there were a lot of Cats fans kind of going, oh, yeah, well, now we'll bank those 2 wins now that we've got the Freo one. We'll,
Yep.
we'll bank the win over the Saints. We'll get down and celebrate Hawkeye with a big win against the Eagles. That's not how it works. Like, you look through the Saints season, and I will get to some Geelong-focused stuff because I think there's some angles we definitely need to hit around what the Cats, did right, but also what they did wrong, because we can talk all day about how well the Saints played in the second half, but there's some eerie similarities about how the Saints were able to get on top in the second half that goes back to losses against Port Adelaide, the loss against the Suns even, that goes back to when Freo were in control of the game against us, what Freo tried to do to beat us, which they didn't quite get away with. So I think we've got to talk about that. But just to look at the Saints, they lost to us by 8 points. What was it in the first round? They beat
Yeah.
Collingwood the next week. They've been in a lot of games. They lost to GWS by a point. They lost to Port
Yeah.
Adelaide, I think, by 10 points and 2 points in their 2 games. They beat Sydney. I think that if you can trust them to build on what they've done this year, they might start winning those close losses next year and be a team that fights for the not just the 8, but
Yeah.
maybe higher.
There's
Um,
there's only 2 games out of the whole year that you say St Kilda didn't have any chance of, like, on the score, they were well and truly out of out of the game pretty early on, and there was Western Bulldogs in round 6. They lost by 60 points, and then the Brisbane Lions by 85 points. Every other game, you've been right, that they've been right in. So I think a lot of Cats fans, myself included, we just, we went in going, "Oh, this is a team not making the finals," and just basically going, "We're going to win this game. Doesn't matter what the Saints throw at us. Doesn't matter. We'll win. We'll smash them. We'll get a good win. Move on to next week, and maybe that juju flowed into the Cats of just going, it's just the Saints. They're not making finals. They're not going to end up putting too much effort. But it's always these teams that aren't making finals are going to be in that little bit extra effort to go. Let's spoil someone else's season. Let's spoil another team of either making the finals or missing out on or getting a really bad finals, like disadvantage in the finals. And Saints did that against us, and I think, looking back at their fixture, I don't think we should have been surprised at all.
Yeah. I think there's some. Maybe we'll try and address some of where it went wrong, because I feel like we can talk about what went right, like the things we liked when we start talking about some of the players, around our votes, and then maybe players who are on the fringe of our votes. Something that really sticks out to me, I keep a bit of an eye on the pressure acts stats and that sort of thing. So I think we could all agree that's a big area where it felt like we could not stop St Kilda exiting their back half. They controlled the ball, particularly in the second half, 128 marks. They created 241 uncontested possessions. If you look at their season average, that was, plus 15. But it was, nearly 50 more than what we were able to create on the night. They also beat us in contested possession. That was a bit closer, 138 to 127. But they created so much uncontested ball. As I said, 128 marks. Defensively, they also out-tackled us in the end, 64 tackles to 50. Now, that's +4 on their season average. Geelong, minus 15.5 on our season average. So that's a fairly significant lack, particularly given how we started. Like, I think if you go back and look at, the tackle numbers across the first half, probably a lot higher than what we offered in the second. And so if you then boil that down into the pressure acts, I've just looked at the last 3 games. So against the Crows, we had 339 total pressure acts. 208 of them were in the front half, 131 in the defensive half. Against Freo, we had 304. That was 174 in the front half, 130 in the back half. Against the Saints, that dropped to just 274 total pressure acts. That's 65 less than we had against the Crows. It's 30 less than we had against Freo. And our forward half pressure acts were just 162. Definitely our lowest total of the last 3 games. And a defensive half, just 112 defensive half pressure acts. And some players I'd probably point to, Johnny, and I'd love for you to know, I'd love for you to have a chat maybe about whether you think, was it our pressure and intensity dropped? Was it, do you want to talk about the Saints and how they maybe made it hard for us to pressure them with how they use the footy? But just a couple of individual players that stand out to me when we're talking about these stats.
Yep.
Tom Atkins, just 10 pressure acts for the game. That is almost, he's normally easily getting you 25 to 30. He has just 10.
Easily.
You look at a player like, who was like Brad Close, just 12 pressure acts. Sean Manor, just 12 pressure acts. These are players who are normally getting 20 sort of minimum. So those guys have really quiet nights. Do you think it was a matter of the long trip to Perth? Do you think it was just do we just drop off? We thought the job was done. Do you think it was what the Saints did, or a combo of all of it?
It definitely feels like a combo of all of it. But the main one that we've overlooked is the Cats player got over 30 disposals. So that's the reason why we lost. Someone got over 30 disposals. That's Jack Bowes.
Good one, Bosey.
Bosey. It cost us the game there. But no, yeah, I wouldn't say I wouldn't say the travel was a risk because, players wouldn't say it was to travel. The travel isn't, wouldn't affect
Mm.
you, especially being a Victorian team. It's fair enough. He's an interstate team who has to travel a whole lot more than us lucky Victorian teams. But I think it
Mm.
was definitely a combination of the way the Saints played, the way they used the ball, just that kick mark, and just not making the mistakes. Like they were making a lot of mistakes in that first half where they couldn't take the marks. The Cats were able to apply that pressure, and then they just weren't dropping them. They weren't making
Mm.
those fundamental mistakes that they were making in the first half, and they controlled from there. And the Cats just, when you kick and mark, if you mark it, you're not going to get tackled. You're not going to get pressured. You're going to have a easy kick to pinpoint someone, and away you go. And they did it really well. The Cats just weren't able to pick up the spare man on the wing or going through the center or even inside 50. Like they just sort of got lost in the way the Saints were passing it. Like maybe they caught out ball watching a bit too much, like watching where the ball was going and not the player. And then
Mm.
the amount of times the Saints had a free player inside 50, easy mark, and then a shot at goal. It was like, how does that keep happening? And I think could have just been as simple as they've just caught out watching the ball a bit too much, which can happen when the opposition moves it slow. You think you got your person covered, and then next minute you're like, oh, where are they? Oh, they just marked the ball 10 meters off me. Really easy done. So yeah, I think it was mainly the way the Saints played just didn't let us to apply the pressure that we normally do. Frustrates the players, frustrates everyone, and then start telling other players, "Oh, you should be watching that player. Why weren't you watching that player? Oh, I was watching this player."
Mm.
Disconnect in the midfield, defense, all that, and it just makes a big snowball effect. And yeah, I just think my main reason is I just think it was just a way the Saints were able to control the ball, and good on them.
I
They
think,
found a way to win, and they did.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think, it is probably a thing that is easier for teams to apply outside of Kardinia Park. I think,
Yeah.
it doesn't surprise me that the Cats have had their highest pressure act count and front half pressure act count. Their highest one the last 3 weeks was against the Crows. It's easier sort of to deny teams that exit. Now that's not saying it's impossible for teams to apply it, because I think we saw in the first half or even the first 2.5 quarters of the Port Adelaide game, the blueprint of what the Saints did. And that is, it's not just like kick to mark, because the difference between this game for me and the Fremantle game is this game looked more like the Port game. And we talked about this either on the preview pod, or maybe it's just you and Sam and I in a group chat, saying the key is don't kick to mark and be cautious with it. You've got to
Mm,
really flick it around at speed, because Geelong then cannot pressure you quick enough. They can't cause any pressure on the kick. And they aren't able to set up ahead of the ball as well. And the Saints had some absolutely devastating switches, but they moved the ball with a bit of flair and aggression and intent. And I personally feel like that's what let the Dockers down in the last game, was that they weren't aggressive enough. It's something that impressed me about the Saints, and it's something that, if I can take my Geelong goggles off, probably impressed me a bit about Port in that game, was to go into Kardinia Park and actually aggressively move the ball, and do it at speed and not fear the mistake. I thought that Freo probably got a bit cautious and a bit timid with how they racked up their numbers, but
mm,
then didn't pull the trigger on the more aggressive kicks. Thought the Saints did it really well. I also do wonder, like, I'm a big believer that we have a really talented athlete in O'Shane Mullen, who
Oh,
can do something down the track.
yeah.
Flash that incredible speed. But look, it's a little bit like the AFLW. You have players come in from Gaelic games, and they all develop their abilities and understanding and find their role in at different speeds. You look at a player like Aisling Maloney, and I'm sorry if anyone's watching and they're not familiar with the Cats AFLW side, but would love for you to jump on our coverage this year because they look like being an
Definitely.
exciting team again. But you have a player like Rachel Kearns come in who looks the part, physical, fast, really into the tackling, aggressive part of the game. Has played a lot of different sports. Then you have Aisling Maloney come in, taller, sort of more slender, fast, sort of creative forward type. It took them like 4 years to find where Rachel Kearns fit. And there were times when people were saying, I don't think she's going to make the jump. Aisling Maloney comes in year one and looked like, almost, a very much a fringe All-Australian. And I think this year could be an All-Australian and potentially a top 10 player in the league. Rachel Kearns only just found her role at the end of last season at halfback. I kind of feel like
Yeah.
O'Shane is in a similar spot. He's taking a little longer, and there's stuff there that we can mine. But I thought there were probably a couple of players that, if everyone's healthy, aren't playing. I look at your Mitch
Yes.
Nevitt. I look at your O'Shane Mullen. They're two guys who I think if they're, if everyone's fit, those guys get squeezed out. And that's not
Yeah, definitely.
like a knock on them. It's just saying where the list is at, where their development's at. But I also thought
Yeah, definitely.
probably there were a couple of guys that looked a bit tired, Johnny. I thought Tommy
Yeah.
Atkins probably looked a little tired. 20% kicking efficiency and just the 10 pressure acts. Even Brad Close, I thought, probably wasn't his best game. And those are two players who are so
No.
important to what we do.
Yeah, definitely them too. Like even in the first half when the Cats were on, like Tom Atkins was doing a few really good things, like getting out of the center, applying a little bit of pressure, but just wasn't his same level and same as Brad Close. Like then both of them throughout the entire game just weren't at their normal high standard selves. That could be the travel, maybe, but I doubt they would admit it. It's just a poor night, and sometimes you have those. Who else? Who else had a? There's a few others, couple others maybe that had fairly quiet nights. Speech and effort there. I thought his night was a bit of a hit and miss. He looked all right, but yeah, still feels like he's a few kgs light or just not strong enough just yet, or just doesn't have those skills developed. Yeah, he's still developing,
Yep.
still coming through. Same as Oisin Mullen, he had that really great burst of speed where he like just chased Saints got a player, pressured him, got the ball, handballed it on, nearly got it back, but it was exciting to see that
Mm.
really quick burst of speed that he was able to do. But throughout the rest of the game, he still just looks a little bit lost. So it's Mitch Nevitt.
Yeah.
So yeah, like as you said, them two, if Tanner Bruin's fit, if Zach Tui's fit, you bring them two straight back in straight away because yeah, them two still got a little bit of work to do in the VFL and to develop up a bit and get the basic skills sorted out.
Mm.
But there's still a lot of promise, a lot of excitement around those two, and that's glad of this Cats team. We still got time to develop these guys and get them at a level that will be a benefit to the Cats.
Yeah. And I think too, they're almost the flip of each other. I've talked about it a bit on the VFL coverage on the Hoops Crew Patreon, where, Nevitt probably is there in some of the more like skill football, sort of football skill stances, but probably at this stage isn't quite physically ready yet. And then you flip it over. O'Shane Mullen is physically there. He's physically a professional athlete. He is big enough, fast enough, explosive enough, but he just doesn't have the football understanding and skills quite yet. So I think both of them, have something to give, but are probably not in the best 23 right now. They're playing due to injury, which, This is what happens sometimes. I also thought we really missed Sam De Koning down back.
Mm,
I thought that having to send Blix down back at times, I thought that it just limited us a bit. And I thought we would, yeah, I know. I just think having him back there is better. Having him playing back in that defensive 50 is better. We saw him look really good against Freo, I thought, and play a really good role. And that's not to say that some of our key defenders didn't play well. I thought Jack Henry, he didn't get my votes, but he was right on the verge of getting my votes.
yep.
Probably a bit of a victim of circumstance in that second quarter where goals just started to steamroll in. It's
Yeah.
easy to sort of start overlooking the backline players, but look, I think there's definitely some things to work on. There's some flaws that need working through, but I do think that you look around the AFL and most sides have that. You can
Yeah.
look at you can sort of trawl through forensically any team's lineup of results this year, and you can find like sort of abomination sort of results that you go,
Oh, absolutely.
what happened there? Like,
It,
like
look at
why
Sydney.
did the Swans get pumped by Port?
Yeah, exactly.
What?
It's
Why did they lose to Richmond?
yeah.
So
How did they lose to
I'm
St
still
Kilda as well?
yeah, I'm still optimistic that
Yeah,
Geelong's
and
best is still very much good enough, but it's being able to play our
yep,
best, and as we've just said, the team wasn't, and there were definitely some individuals who weren't.
yeah, and our best has still got us into the top four at this stage, and our best will still has made another finals appearance after everyone said the Cats are going to fall off the cliff. The older or aging stars are getting too old. The youngs, there's no young talent coming through, or not enough young talent coming through. And I was thinking, well, it's been a really good mix of young talent where most of the times when the Cats have needed it, a lot of the young guys have stepped up when it's needed someone to step up and take control of the game, and
Mm,
they're the ones that drove for the victory. Like your Ollie
mm,
Dempsey's, Jack Bowes, um, Tanner Bruin, Brad Close,
mm,
Tyson Stengel. List goes on. Like there's a lot of young guys that have pushed this team to the finals, and yeah, we've had some bad, terrible losses, but we've also had some pretty amazing wins. And as I say again, we've
mm,
made the finals yet again. Um, hopefully, a win against West Coast on the weekend will sew up top four. Another double
mm.
chance in the finals when people said we weren't going to make it. So, you know, we got to take. You can't just eat cake all the time. We've got to take those bitter pills every now and then. And if it's against a team that played a really good game of football against us, there was no controversial calls from the umpires. Like on the night I was after the game, I was like, there's no really calls by the umpires. Are like, how come that's a frick? That's absolute disaster of
Yeah.
umpiring. I thought the umpiring was pretty well rounded. Like I don't think you
Mm,
could any fan could actually go the umpires cost us that game. No, the Saints, the way the Saints played, cost us that game. The way we played cost us that game. Nothing to do with anything else. Just those two factors. And at the end of the day, the old saying goes, the better team won. And the Cats have
yeah.
just got to learn
I
and
think
move
that's
on.
fair.
Yeah, definitely. The better team
I
won.
I actually wouldn't. I don't like. I think the Cats will just back in these players to just keep
Yeah,
going, but like I wouldn't have been against. You look at Brad Close, he's played all 22 games this season. I know you can, and lots of players play all 22 games, but like, I do wonder, like with someone like Atkins, off night, or is he feeling they put on a lot of pressure. Like Atkins does a
yeah,
lot of pressure work. I do sometimes wonder whether they would consider bringing, I don't know, I'd be reticent to say Parfitt just because of how he played last time, but then, you can have just one off night. But I've just been watching the VFL game against Sandringham this afternoon, and Jai Clark although he's not racked up a heap of the footy in this game, I've only watched the first 3 quarters. His pressure and intensity is super high. Like, his aggression and intent. Um, I do wonder whether. I mean, there's a lot riding on this last game, so I think it's important to play a side that you think will be the one that gets you the win. So you certainly can't look past Atkins' track record and his experience and that sort of thing. But even just more broadly, outside of a player like Atkins, you just look at all of the players who went out there and maybe were down on usual production. Sometimes you just have an off day. Sometimes you do need a week of rest, particularly if you're one of those players that has been there week in, week out. Atkins has played 19 of 22 games. Close has played 22 of 22. And as you said, the list sort of goes on. There's a lot of players in that boat, but their role is so specific in terms of pressuring the ball carrier. Yeah. Anyway, I was just thinking, Johnny, let's do some votes.
Yep.
Now, we'll do votes first up. We did this for the first time last week in this order. We used to talk players that were on the fringe and then do our votes. I actually prefer it when we do our votes and then we know cards are on the table. We can talk about players who didn't make it in. Feel free to fire away. Let's go ones. Let's each do our one, then let's each do our two, and each do our three. So we'll discuss each one as we go. So who was your
All right.
one vote?
My one vote. Let me just bring up my votes because I'm unprepared like that.
That's all right.
My one votes. I'm giving to Ollie Dempsey. I thought that first half by him was fairly decent, and I still think he tried throughout that second half. He didn't really get much of an opportunity, but he's still getting some fairly good position and applying some good bits of pressure here and there. Like, I don't think you can really single out many Cats players in that second half that played exceptional. But I thought his first half was really good and applied a lot of pressure and was there and thereabouts is where he normally is and where we expect him to be.
Yeah, and 20 touches, a couple of marks, a goal assist, a goal himself, 393 meters gained. He spent over 96% time on ground. It was the highest count of any Cat. So yeah,
Nice.
he is a lock for selection every week, and I agree
Oh,
with you.
definitely.
As you said, it's hard to single out, players who I think it's like it's hard to look at any Geelong player who had a complete performance. Like I don't really think many put together
Yeah.
a 4-quarter performance. I just don't think that really happened. My one vote was Patrick Dangerfield. I thought he's had a terrific final month to the season so far. Not a game-winning effort, unfortunately, this week, but still 20 disposals, 4 marks, 3 tackles, 7 clearances, kicked a goal, had a goal assist, 604 meters gained, spent 71% of time on ground. Now, that I believe, again, is up. If you looked at his season average, I would guess that is up on it. I feel like he's been more in that 65%. We talked about last week against Freo that I think was it low 80s even. I like this tactic of resting him up forward or putting him into the forward line. I like keeping his impact on the ground. So that was my one vote. Who was your two?
My two is Sean Manor.
Same for me.
Really,
I also went Sean Manor.
really fantastic. Again, first half, second half, I thought he was one of those players that continued throughout the entire game to try and make something happen. Like he was one of the rare players that from go to woe, he was there and applying pressure, trying to break tackles, trying to find a way to goal. Kicked 2 goals himself, really good goals. You could see his strength, his self belief, his soaring, his ideals around what the team is starting to blossom and show itself. So yeah, I thought a
There'd be
very
1,000
good game by.
blossoms bloom.
Yeah, I thought he was
Thanks, Bob.
just excellent. A really, really good game. And another player after he's come back from the VFL, continues to cement himself in this team, and I can see why. I can see why they went after him. You really started to see that form that they saw in his Ruby days, and why we're pretty lucky to get him, and he's going to become a mainstay of that small forward group, and even the forward line group as well. So really excited to see him, and even midfield, like his strength to be able to just shove people off him while they're tackling is excellent.
Mm.
Like a few times it didn't work out, but I'm glad he still gave it a shot every time he could. But yeah, he's going to be a really excellent player for the number of years at the Cats.
Yeah, to come in and have 21 touches, 4 clearances, 5 marks, 394 meters gained, 2 goals, 1. His disposal efficiency was just around the right amount, sort of thing. It's at a level you can accept, 66.7%, around the middle of the table for those. For this Cats team. His kicking efficiency was about the same, 60 odd percent, which is actually fairly decent. There's a few Cats lower than that. So no, I really liked his game. I think I love his versatility. I love that he can play multiple roles. I love that you could pretty
Yeah.
much play him inside forward 50 as a pressuring, goal kicking forward. I love that you could, stick him on ball, which he, has often started to do in the last month or so. He's a dynamic player, and I just love those success stories. Ever since like James Podsiadly being one, Tommy Stewart being one, players like Manor who just come through a different pathway. That's why I still
Yeah.
have some faith that Hardy might not be at the end of his journey at the end of this year.
Do you
We may
reckon?
yet see him in the hoops against West Coast. Who knows? But yeah, 3 votes. I'll give you mine. You tell me yours. I went Lawson Humphreys.
I went Lawson Humphreys as well.
My feelings here, Johnny, goes back to the fact that I don't think any player had a complete game. And so I had to try and dice up, well, who was the best for the longest, who was the most, consistently able to execute the strength areas of their game. And I thought, I don't know about you, that's why Lawson Humphreys got the nod for me.
Yeah.
24 disposals. What do you have? Let me just go back to his thing here. Good if I got into the right game, Johnny. Lawson Humphreys, 24 disposals, 16 by foot, 8 by hand, 7 marks, couple of tackles, couple of clearances, 227 meters gained. He was third on the team for disposal efficiency, 91.7%. He led the team with 9 intercept possessions, and his kicking efficiency pretty damn swell as well, 87.5%. One of just 4 Cats who did not commit a clanger on the evening, though he did have a couple of turnovers. How are you finding? Obviously, I watched him for sort of 10 weeks in the VFL before he burst onto AFL screens. How are you enjoying watching him, Johnny, in this AFL side?
Just loving watching this kid do his things. Like, what an absolute superstar! Like, if he started from the first game of this year, which it may not have been where he may not have been able to see this, but he could be up for definitely a Rising Star nomination. I think he's already got one, but he could still win it. He could still win the Rising Star. He's that good, that exciting. Just thought, yeah, like what a game when everyone else was sort of falling apart around him. He was standing tall. His pressure is great. He's attacking the ball. His positioning, his kicking, his decision making, his composure. Everything about him just smells of AFL superstar in the making. And I'm so glad the Cats traded traded so hard to get pick 93 that turned into 63 for this absolute freak of a player. Like, if this is his lowest level, who knows what his ceiling's going to be? Like, he could be a seriously good player, and it's the same as many other players. Just pay him whatever he wants, get him on the books, get him to a long-term contract or a few years contract at the Cats and tie him here because, yeah, I can't see anything but great things happening with Lawson Humphries. Like, we've got the taste, we've got the entree ready for the little starter next year, and then the main course. Just keep feeding us like we're at Smorgies, dining in on that all you can eat, watching Lawson Humphries go about his business on the football
Buffet.
field in the hoops.
I love it. You're on with the metaphors tonight, Johnny. No, I
Thank you.
like that. I'll second everything you've said there on Lawson. I think he's a star of the here and now and a star of the future. Let's lock him up to an extension ASAP. Just before we get out of here on the public part, just to take a few minutes, I thought Jack Henry was a player that was on the fringe of my votes. I thought across the first half, he was clearly one of Geelong's best. He led the team for spoils, 6 of them. A single turnover on the night, no clangers. Had, where are we? 6 marks. Probably just, unfortunately, was a victim of the pressure higher up the ground, falling down, and being impacted by what was happening ahead of him. It sort of opened the back line up. We've talked about it before. The back line so often cops the brunt of the criticism when holes start to open, but so often the finger is actually pointing at the wrong group of players. Sometimes, in fact, it's everything that's happening ahead of them that is just making their job hard and sometimes impossible, really. There's only so long you can hold together when the ball is just streaming through uncontested. Jack Henry can't get up the ground and apply pressure in the front half to stop it coming back his way. I thought he was good. Did you have thoughts on Jack Bowes, Johnny? Because I think there'll probably be a few people out there saying he had 31 touches, 4 marks, 4 clearances, nearly 800 meters gained and a goal assist. What are you morons thinking? What did you like about Jack Bowes? What kept him out of your votes? Yeah, what are your thoughts there?
Well, the obvious reason of getting 30 disposals and costing us the game with his 30 disposals, obviously. No, I thought, another great game by Jack Bowes, but I think it was just his intensity sort of waned off in that second half, which sort of kept him out of my votes. Just that, the eyeball test where he was applying the pressure, but it wasn't the effective pressure, and his disposals weren't his usual standard of disposals either throughout that second half. I think unlucky not to get in the votes, but I just think there was these young guys just played that little bit better than him when needed players to lift that little bit more. But I don't think it was like a terrible game. It was just probably a bit below his usual standard of what he would like to produce. Like a lot of disposals, but just because a player gets lots of disposals doesn't mean they're all excellent disposals. So main reason.
I agree there. I thought he did some things really well, and then I thought you saw the best and the worst of Jack Bowes in this game. I think he's got a knack for winning the ball. I think he's got this bizarre knack of sort of tripping through congestion, and suddenly it's almost like Mr. Magoo. He dodges a swinging steel girder. A buzzsaw goes whizzing past his ankles. A napping, a gnashing dog almost bites his hand off, but suddenly Jack Bowes has space and he bombs it up the field. Like, he has this weird ability to create space in slow motion almost. But I thought you also saw that the disposal efficiency is just, it was the 5th worst on the team, 58.1%. Now, sometimes you can get away with that. But I thought he was a bit punished for it. His kicking efficiency was 52.2%. He had 11 turnovers for the game, which was, I believe, game high. He had 11. Max Holmes had 8. And, if you looked at Max Holmes' game, I would have said similarly. It's probably his his use of the footy that cost him getting closer to my vote. So that's the reason for me and for you, by the sound of things, that Bose didn't make votes. Some other players that might have been close, or just some others that you wanted to comment on their performance before we get out of here, Johnny. Probably got like 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'd say Max Holmes. Again, he's one of those players that looks really good with the ball, can run. Like, I love his run, love his carry of the ball, his attack and his pressure and all that. He does all that really well. It's still just his kicking that is really letting him down at the moment. I think there's just a few too many times where his kicks are just a bit misdirected. Like he's doing a gut running.
Yeah.
And then when you're doing that gut running, you've just got no control of where the ball goes. And I thought there was a few times where we've gone inside 50. It looked really good. And then his kick just it's either a bit overshot or too lofted, and the Saints players were able to pretty easily defend it. I thought Dangerfield again played a really good game, did what he could throughout the game, but yeah, he was down on his usual output, and it is tough when it's just one of those games where it was just tough to get your head in the game when you can't get the ball, you can't pressure, you can't do much, especially when you're one of those getting there, get it out, pressure the opposition to make a mistake. And once he couldn't do that, then yeah, his game sort of dropped off as well. And I also thought Tom Stewart's when Tom Stewart gets angry, you can see when he gets angry, he plays good, really well football. He gets into the faces of the opposition and hits them hard with good hips and shoulders and tackles. But when he gets frustrated, that's when he sort of just loses his form a little bit, where he just gets angry, gets frustrated at himself or at the team or at opposition players and goes after them, and then doesn't really have that effect that he normally does. So, saying all, I think a few players will look back on this week and go, "Yeah, they played a bad game. Time to turn it around. No point in dwelling on it. Got another game. Go to that one. Get ready." So, I don't think it's going to be a big issue for any of these players. They're going to look back on it and go, "Yeah, we can see where we need to improve."
I'll just quickly comment, Johnny, on Shannon Neal.
Yep,
I thought we
good
were
one.
about to see that breakout performance. I talked about it on the game preview. I said I feel like at some point soon we're going to get this Shannon Neal breakout performance. Now I keep saying it, we yet to sort of see it, but I think it's interesting. He's averaging sort of like a goal a goal and a half a game. I think the last time I looked, he was second or third on our list for average goals per game. I thought he took some marks. Thought he assisted a goal really nicely. I had him down for 2 goal assists, but the app only has him down for 1. I think he's developing. I still think, you know, I think our forward line looks better when Jeremy Cameron and Shannon Neal are in it together. I thought it was just funny, once we threw Jeremy Cameron back inside forward 50 in the last, he bobs up and kicks 2 goals in quick time. But I thought there was some signs from Neil. And I would just add into that, there was one other player I wanted to talk about, and I can't think who it was. Never mind. They'll get a mention on another podcast. Maybe it was
Yeah,
just Cameron, just
it
sort of,
was just
playing this selfless team role, playing where the team
yeah,
needs him to. 16 touches, 7 marks, and he kicks 3 goals. I know 2 of them were in, quote unquote junk time, but yeah, gosh, I just wish we could get back to those days of seeing him kick big bags. And I know
so
he is
good,
playing
wasn't
a
it?
role for the team. I don't personally think it's a form thing on his end. I think it's just a different role he's playing. But yeah. All right, that'll do us. That is all for the public part of the show tonight. We are now going to head on over to the Hoops Crew Patreon to answer a few Patreon questions and also talk a bit about the contract extensions to Jack Henry and Zach Guthrie. Just give our sort of thoughts on that. I imagine there'll probably be a standalone video from Paul or Ben on that. That would not surprise me. They're normally on the button with all of those sorts of things. But as per usual,
Oh,
we'll
yes.
play you out with our favorite four-legged friend, the halftime horse. Until next time, go Cats!
Go Cats!
You get your cordial, you get your lollies, a spray from the coach. Lollies, absolutely. So you get your cordial, you get your lollies, a spray from the coach. Lollies, absolutely.
That's what halftime's about.